Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Side to Sideline Report. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we have another jam-packed episode here today, as always. We're going to be talking about the NBA Finals, which seems to be a very common topic of conversation amongst the sports community as of now. After Game 4, after that crazy and historic ending to that game. So I have 5 points I'm going to be talking about in terms of the NBA Finals, and then we're going to be going over the NFL offseason and some of my biggest takeaways, some of my teams and players to look out for going into training camp, going into OTAs, and then eventually going into next season. As now is kind of that season of fantasy football mock drafts and amping up for your fantasy football leagues. So I'll be giving you some pointers on that. I think that I have some expertise in that category. I've been playing fantasy football for a pretty long time. So we'll get into that in the second segment of the podcast. So let's just dive right into it with the NBA Finals. Now let's address Game 4 before we talk about anything. What a game. Largest comeback in NBA Finals history. I mean, the Knicks, I knew that the Knicks were the kind of team that you couldn't count out in games. I knew that they were always one of those teams that has the heart and has the team structure of a team that's just not going to give up, right? A team that's just going to constantly get after on the defensive end, and then is pretty consistent offensively, right? They have a bunch of guys in that lineup, like McAllister, just like Karl-Anthony Towns, like Jalen Brunson, of course, who is a superstar. And like guys like OG Anunoby, who was the unsung hero of that game, like you knew that they were always going to be in the game, right? Like you knew you couldn't count. You knew as a fan you couldn't switch the channel on the next game if they're down 20 points, right? Because you knew that they could come back. They've done it throughout the regular season. They've done it even in the playoffs. But even then, at halftime, when I saw that the Spurs were up 29. Right, like I watched the game. I watched the game throughout the first quarter, and then I had other things to tend to outside of that. So I was occupied throughout the entire second quarter. But after the first quarter, I thought that the Spurs came out hot. I thought that that's how the Spurs always play. That's how they've played throughout the entire postseason, and like I just thought that it was going to be a gritty game. It's going to come down to the wire again, like every game in the series has, and like I didn't think too much of it. And then when I came back and when I saw that the score, I don't remember the exact score, but I do know that they were up 29 points at halftime, and like I thought the game was over, right? I thought with the Spurs having the best player in the series in Victor Wembanyama, with them having that hungry team, and this desperation game where where if they lose like they did, like they're down 3-1, they were desperate in the first half, but you kind of saw that desperation die out in the second half, and that's when the Knicks really came back. And like I wrote the Knicks off in the second half just because I trusted the Spurs to maintain that lead. But like the Knicks just got it done, right? Like the Knicks just have players. They have those hungry players that can step up in those big moments. Like who would have thought Jose Alvarado would be a key player for the Knicks in that fourth quarter? Like Mike Brown just made key adjustments throughout that game. Like when Karl-Anthony Towns got in foul trouble early, you just like you really saw Mike Brown dig into that depth, and they put I forgot, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but his first name's Ariel. They put number 55 Ariel in, and he really you really saw Mike Brown like dig into that depth, like I just said, but like in those moments, like where Ariel didn't play like the entire postseason, like you put him in the game there, and he has some good defensive plays. Like that just shows how good this Knicks team is, how hungry this Knicks team is, how much momentum they have in the Garden. And I just thought that like it was like almost poetic the way that game went, the way the second half of that game went. The Knicks just slowly, like possession after possession, timeout after timeout, they just wore the Spurs down. And with that experience, with their chemistry, with their just grit, we're able to pull through. And that was just an amazing game to watch, and extremely exciting Game 4. And now the Knicks are almost like it's the Knicks series to lose at this point, and that's almost insane to say given the Knicks history, given the Knicks recent history, I should say. But yeah, that's the point we're at. So that was my Game 4 analysis, kind of, and we're gonna touch on some more points in Game 4 throughout the 5 points I have for the segment. But the first point on this segment is that the Spurs fan, listen. I don't think any Spurs fans watch this podcast. But if there are any Spurs fans watching this podcast, don't worry if you lose the series. There's legitimately nothing to worry about. You have far exceeded the timeline, like the traditional timeline that a bunch of rebuilding teams that get the number one pick go through. I think that it's going to be the timeline that the Mavericks are going to go through with Cooper Flag. It's the timeline that we've seen with the Detroit Pistons when they got Cade Cunningham. It's a slow rebuild for most of these teams, and slowly building around the edges. And the Spurs have done that. They've slowly built around the edges, but I think that we knew how generational of a talent Victor Wembanyama was, but how much better he has gotten over his first 3 years has really sped up this timeline, along with getting those good draft picks to get guys like Stephon Castle, to get guys like Dylan Harper. You really hit on those picks. And the majority of this team is young. And then they've hit on some of those veteran guys like Luke Cornett, I think is one of the best backup bigs in the league. And I think you hit on a bunch of those outside pieces like Devin Vassell, keeping him around, keeping Keldon Johnson around. I think that all of those guys are essential to this team's success. And there's really nothing to be worried about. You have all those guys tied down, really. You have no real urgency or you're in no rush to make any moves to win now. You have a team. You're going to be locked in the top 2 of the West next season, barring any league altering moves in the West this offseason. You're going to be locked in that top 2 seat, top 2 to come out of the West next season. So there's really nothing to worry about. You exceeded the timeline. You're in the finals now with this really young team, and you've showed some life, and you've showed some real potential that you guys are going to be a dynasty moving forward around Victor Wembanyama, around Dylan Harper, around Stephon Castle. There's really nothing to worry about, I just keep saying. So that is the first point on this list. Now, the second point on this list is that OG Anunoby is Mr. Reliable. I mean, that's really my nickname, and I think that fits him like a glove. He has stepped up for the Knicks whenever they need him, wherever they need him, throughout the entire postseason. And there have been games where the Knicks have won playoff games with OG Anunoby. Who's OG Anunoby? OG Anunoby has been their leading scorer. He has been that flexible, but he's also been he's had games where he's the third or fourth leading scorer in the lineup. He's that flexible of a player where he can score, he can lead your team in scoring, he can provide that scoring burst, but he can also take that backseat and just provide that defense, provide that playmaking, provide that facilitating, provide that crashing the offensive glass like he did at the end of Game 4 to win the game. It's OG Anunoby is so reliable in every asset of the game. He's a two-way player. I made this statement to my brother multiple times in the past, and the statement is, OG Anunoby can give any team a chance to win a championship. You can put OG Anunoby on any team, and in my opinion, that team is an instant contender to come out of their conference because he is that impactful, he is that versatile, and you've seen it throughout his entire lifespan on the Knicks, throughout his entire tenure on the Knicks, I should say. You've seen him continuously step up and show that flexibility, show that defensive versatility, that ability to guard the 1 through 5. He's just really been that, guy. He can be that catch-and-shoot guy. He can be that guy to create for himself off the dribble, to drive and create for his teammates. He's been that guy who you can really rely on to do anything on the floor. And so that is just the second point on this list, I guess, is that is the new name for OG Anunoby, in my opinion, is Mr. Reliable. He is that guy who you can count on to do anything on the basketball court in any moment. And that we're going to stick with the Knicks for the third point on this, for the segment, and that is that Jalen Brunson has officially entered that superstar category. I feel like that is something that is starting to become common amongst the NBA community in believing that Jalen Brunson is a superstar. But I think that he's really solidified himself, and I think that that is shown in his consistency offensively. to consistently score 25 to 30 points a game, even score like 40 points, to have those 40-point games. Like, he's an inevitable scorer. He gets to his spots. He's going to put up those points. You can't really do anything about it. And in these big moments, he has done that consistently. He has hunted those matchups with Victor Wembanyama, scored over Victor Wembanyama on multiple possessions in this NBA Finals. And he really hasn't shied away from any moment. I mean, he's very high in usage percentage. I don't know exactly what it is, but I've heard them mention it multiple times on the broadcast. He's very high in usage. He's like, the ball is consistently in his hands. The offense is always run through him. He's always getting a touch on every possession, and like those are traits that only a superstar has, and he has really entered his name into that superstar category with names like Luka Doncic, like Anthony Edwards, like names like that, like Jason Tatum, names like that where you can rely on them to be the best player on your championship team. Like Jalen Brunson is that player. He is a superstar. And if the Knicks close out the series, which I think they will, that will only solidify that argument. And I think that, like, Jalen Brunson's a superstar. So that is the third point for the segment. And then the fourth point in the segment, I alluded to I kind of foreshadowed that I was going to allude to the game four in this segment or in these points, and this is where it is. Victor Wembanyama is rattled, and this is where you really see Victor Wembanyama his experience come into play. I think that's one of the most glaring aspects of Game 4 is that, like, in missing those free throws down the stretch of the game and in just not shooting the ball efficiently, not getting to his spots efficiently, kind of being unsure of himself when he has the ball. You saw in the way he was, like, just moving the ball, the way he was, like, just the way his mannerisms were offensively, defensively. Like, he just wasn't sure of himself. He wasn't as impactful of a player as he usually is. And he was rattled, and he felt the pressure, and he really, like, crumbled. And I don't know if it was fatigue from the previous game. I know, like, that, like, the 2 games in San Antonio and the 2 games in New York had one day in between. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I doubt it did because he's playing that schedule throughout the entire playoffs. But Victor Wembanyama showed that he couldn't stand the pressure of playing in Madison Square Garden in the NBA Finals in Game 4. When the crowd got that boost of energy, when the crowd, like, started to get filled with that life again. Like, you really saw Victor Wembanyama not really step up. He kind of shied away. He didn't really, like, demand the ball in the same way he has multiple times throughout the playoffs. Like, he has been the best player in the Western Conference and, in my opinion, the entire NBA in the playoffs, right? Like, I think he has been that player. But in the finals, there hasn't really been, besides Game 3, I think he really stepped up in that game. There hasn't really been a game where you can say, yeah, Victor Wembanyama was the standout player in that game. Like, I feel like that title has belonged to a Knicks player in every other game besides Game 3. And, like, you just expect more out of Victor Wembanyama, and I think that a lot of that is just because of the pressure and because he is young and this is his first time in that stage with that amount of pressure, with this young group surrounding him. Like, you just expect more out of Victor Wembanyama, and he has kind of folded under the pressure. So the fourth point for this segment is that Victor Wembanyama is rattled, and I hope that he can come back and really show up in Game 5, which I think he will. I think individually, I think he will. I just don't know if that will be enough to get them back in the series, which kind of leads me into the fifth and final point for this segment, and that is that the Knicks will close it out in Game 5, in my opinion. I think that with the momentum you have after that game, coming back down 29, the largest comeback in NBA Finals history, like, that momentum is just going to be so hard to stop. New Yorkers are going to be in San Antonio for that game. They were the first 2 games of the series. Like, I just don't think that the Spurs have enough. I think that the Spurs are going to be mentally recovering from that choke job in Game 4. I think that, like, I just think that all momentum is on the Knicks side. I think that home court advantage is kind of counteracted with that momentum, and I think that, like, the Spurs having home court advantage doesn't really mean anything right now just because of how hot the Knicks are and just how lively their fan base is and how hopeful they are and how confident they are that they're going to close out the series. Excuse me, I'm sorry for that. But yeah, I just think that the Knicks are going to close it out. Like, the Spurs don't have enough at this point. They haven't shown enough that they can stop this wave of momentum down 3-1 going into San Antonio. Like, even though they have home court advantage, like I said, I just don't think that's going to be enough. And I think that the Knicks will be NBA champions after tomorrow night's game. So that will conclude the NBA portion of the podcast, the NBA segment. When we come back, we will be talking all about the NFL offseason and what to look out for going into the next NFL season. Stay tuned. Now, for the second portion of this episode of Side to Sideline Report, we will be talking about the NFL and specifically dividing it into two parts. This NFL segment will be divided into two parts. The first part will be me listing 3 teams that I think should be looked out for going into this NFL season just because of the moves they've made in the offseason, the draft, and just how they've looked in OTAs and some of the reports that have come out so far as OTAs have started. And then the second part of my NFL segment will be who I think will be number 1 at each offensive position in fantasy football. Fantasy football is very popular amongst my age group and just in the United States in general. And I think that as this off-season period hits for the NFL, a lot of fans start to look forward to fantasy football and start to join leagues, start to join mock drafts, start to really plan how they're going to draft their teams moving forward, who's going to be on their teams, who they're going to be rooting for this upcoming NFL season. So I will be I will be stating who I think will be the best fantasy football performer at each offensive position in that segment of this podcast. So let's just get right into it with the first team to look out for this NFL season, and it's the New Orleans Saints. Now, why do I have the New Orleans Saints on this list? I think that there's a lot of things Saints fans should be positive about right now. I think Kellen Moore is a great coach, right? I think that he is a great offensive mind. I think that you saw him develop that chemistry with Tyler Shaw towards the end of last season. And I think that he's really found his groove within this offense. He's really started to utilize his weapons to the best of their ability. Chris Olave had a great year last year, right? And I think that when Rashid Shaheed was on the Saints, I think you really saw Kellen Moore use him to the best of his abilities there. I think you really saw him utilize him as a deep threat. I think you've seen him also get very creative in the run game. I think that just offensively and defense, I'm not even getting into defensively. I think there's some positive things to talk about Kellen Moore defensively. But not only that, you made some great moves in the offseason. You got Travis Etienne, right? And I just think that Travis Etienne alone as your new starting running back just adds so much life to this offense. I think drafting Jordan Tyson. Jordan Tyson. Drafting Jordan Tyson as that wide receiver 2 as well. I think those 2 acquisitions alone on the offensive side of the ball, I think are going to be extremely beneficial for this team. I think that this past game, I think we're really going to see an increase in the production of Tyler Shaw this year with those new weapons. I think that Jordan Tyson will be a candidate for the Offensive Rookie of the Year this year. He's my favorite as of right now. Travis Etienne is an elite receiving back. He's an elite elusive back as well. He's great at getting open in space and just really utilizing his speed in open field. And I think that just that entire offense with Chris Olave, with Kellen Moore as the play caller, with Travis Etienne as the running back, Alvin Kamara still on the lineup. I don't know if he'll be playing for the Saints come week 1, but we'll see. He's on the roster as of right now. I just think there's a lot of things to be positive about. I think that defensively, I really like Kool-Aid McKinstry. I really like Chase Young. I think that he's still somewhat young. What is he, 27, 28? I think that despite his injuries, I think that he can still bring a lot to the Saints defense. And I think that there's just a lot of things to look forward to for the Saints team moving forward. And they're my first team to look out for. I wouldn't be surprised if they're top 2, top 3 in their division this year, and I just think that's the expectation for them moving forward. Now coming in at number 2 on this list, I have the Tennessee Titans. This comes mostly from a coaching perspective and from a wide receiver perspective, I'm gonna touch on the wide receiver perspective first, just because I feel like Carnell Tate was a great pick for the Tennessee Titans. I think he's going to be an elite receiver in the league. I think that some of the clips I've seen of him at OTAs making some insane catches. I think he's developing that chemistry with Cam Ward. I think that on top of Wan'Dale Robinson, who's a playmaker to say the least, I think he's very underrated. His last year with the New York Giants this past season, I think he really produced. I think he really took advantage of the kind of next man up situation the Giants were in after Malik Neighbors went down. And that from a wide receiver perspective alone, and then they've made some moves defensively. I forgot exactly what moves they've made. Pardon me, I don't have my computer set up. This is kind of like a raw podcast. This is just basically what I've been feeling about some of the recent it's not a word. Some of the recent activities in the NBA and NFL. So I'm not going to get too particular with stats and like specifics today, so I apologize for that. But I know that they've made some moves around the edges in terms of that with those wide receiver additions and on the defensive side of the ball. And then in the coaching room is where I think they've really strived in this offseason. I think bringing in Robert Saleh was a great move. I think that he's a great defensive mind, and he's really what Tennessee needs. I think he's a culture changer. I think that he really showed that for San Francisco this past year with all their injuries. He really showed that he can still bring life to a defense even if they're overcoming obstacles in terms of health and just performance. I think that Robert Saleh just brings that motivational factor to a team on top of Brian Daboll on the offensive side of the I think he's off. Yeah, he's offensive coordinator. I think bringing Brian Daboll in as offensive coordinator also is a great move. I think that is where we've seen Brian Daboll at his best. I think as head coach, he was kind of put in a weird position in New York, but I think that in Tennessee with the offense, just control of the offense, with Cam Ward, with Wan'Dale Robinson, with Tony Pollard, so with Carnell Tate, you have so much young weapons at your disposal, and I think that Brian Daboll's already familiar with Wan'Dale Robinson. To point that out as well, he's already familiar with their number one wide receiver going into the season. I think that Brian Daboll has a lot to work with. I think that this is a very good position for the Tennessee Titans to be in going forward and going into the season. So they're the second team on this list. And the third and final team that I have on this list to look out for going into the NFL season is the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the thing with the Cincinnati Bengals has always been injuries, right? It's always been health. Joe Burrow has been in and out of the lineup, right? You've always had to rely on your second and third string quarterbacks because Joe Burrow's never been healthy. And then there's been stuff with Jamar Chase. Your defense has never been reliable. But now, going into this year, you add guys like Dexter Lawrence on the defensive side, like Jonathan Allen on the defensive side, that are really going to boost that interior defensive line. So that I think that they're more respectable on the defensive side of the ball. I think they've made those moves on the defensive side with other moves that I can't remember off the top of my head right now. And then on top of that, on the offensive side of the ball, you're getting Joe Burrow back. You have T. Higgins. You have Jamar Chase, right? You have Chase Brown, who's going to just keep getting better. I think that there's a lot of things to be optimistic about for the Bengals this year, right? Obviously, barring any injuries, that's always the thing for the Bengals. But, you have less defensive worries. If I was a Bengals fan, I'd be less worried about the defense going into this year than I've been in years past, because you have a game changer like Dexter Lawrence. You have a potential game changer in a guy like Jonathan Allen, who on the Commanders, and on the Vikings last year showed some of those game-changing abilities. I think that there are a lot of things to look forward to for this Bengals team, and I think that obviously the thing is always injuries. Joe Burrow, when he's healthy, is one of the best quarterbacks, in my opinion, a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. You can just rely on that. If the Bengals are healthy, they're going to be a playoff team. I think that it's just as simple as that. And now with this improved defense, I don't think there's as much excuses. I think that the Bengals are in prime position to be back at the top of the AFC picture, at the top of the AFC North. And yeah, so they're the third team that I have to look out for. I'm sorry, going into this NFL season. And now we will be transitioning into my fantasy football portion of the podcast of this episode of Side to Sideline Report by going over my predicted top fantasy performers at each offensive position. So let's just get right into it. Why waste any time? Starting off at quarterback, we have Josh Allen, right? And I think that this argument is simple. Josh Allen is going to be I think he has been the top fantasy quarterback the past couple seasons. And you just add DJ Moore, who's his best wide receiver since Stephon Diggs. Like, he has there's no excuses for Josh Allen. There's no reason Josh Allen won't be right back at the number one spot this year. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't really see anyone else besides maybe Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is always a shoo-in for that top spot. Lamar Jackson, if he's healthy, right? Like, those guys. But I just think that out of all those guys, Josh Allen's the only guy who's really added a wide receiver who's a serious threat, who will increase that passing game and who will help develop that passing game. And I think that's just going to benefit him. That's going to benefit him in the run too. Defenses are going to be more prepared for the pass with this improved receiving core with DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Keon Coleman, who I think could have a bounce back year, right? Like, they just have so many weapons. And Josh Allen's such a talented quarterback. He's the most talented quarterback in the NFL, right there alongside Patrick Mahomes. Like, it's going to be Josh Allen, in my opinion. I think it's a pretty simple answer. And running back, I think, is pretty simple as well. But I also think it's kind of a battle between two guys. But I'm going to lean towards Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Jahmyr Gibbs, with David Montgomery not in that backfield anymore, granted, they added Isaiah Pacheco. But I don't think Isaiah Pacheco is going to be as daunting of a partner in the backfield as David Montgomery was. I don't think he's going to take away that many touches or as many touches as David Montgomery did to Jahmyr Gibbs. And I just think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a bunch of touches. He's getting better. He's getting stronger. He's getting faster. And he's going to be a central part of this offense moving forward. And I think with more touches, with more catches, with more handoffs, I think that, like, there's no reason Jahmyr Gibbs, like, it's same thing with Josh Allen. There's no reason Jahmyr Gibbs shouldn't be at the top of this list. But I feel like you could also say the same thing for a guy like Bijan Robinson, who I was bouncing back and forth with for this top running back spot. Bijan Robinson is an extremely talented running back, in my opinion. Him and Saquon Barkley are the most talented running backs in the NFL. But I just think that Jahmyr Gibbs is in a better situation. He has a better offensive line. He has a better offensive system overall. And I think that that's just going to benefit him in the long run in fantasy football specifically. So I have Jahmyr Gibbs as my top running back going into the season. Now, at wide receiver, I feel like it's always a two-man race. I feel like it's always Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. This year, I'm going to go Justin Jefferson. I think that Kyler Murray is the best quarterback that Justin Jefferson has had since Kirk Cousins was at the top of his game in Minnesota. And I think that Justin Jefferson is still in his prime. I think that he's hungry. He's hungry to produce. He's hungry to prove everyone wrong. He's hungry to win, most importantly. And I think that we're really going to see that with Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray's hungry too. I think those two are going to have a dangerous connection this year. I think that they can be a dangerous team to look out for. They could have been an honorable mention for the teams to look out for list. But, like, Justin Jefferson's just hungry. I think that Justin Jefferson with this improvement in the quarterback play, I think that that's just going to benefit him in the long run. I think that he's still at the top of his game. He's hungry. He has a better quarterback. Like, those are all things that lead to elite fantasy production, and I think that Justin Jefferson has all that going for him, on top of him, in my opinion, still being the best wide receiver in the NFL. So Justin Jefferson is number one for my wide receiver. And to finish off this fantasy football portion and the entire podcast, for tight end, I have Brock Bowers. Now, I think tight end is kind of a tricky position to navigate. I feel like there's always a surprise tight end that kind of like introduces themselves into the conversation every year. Like last year, why am I blanking on who it was? I'm sorry, I'm a horrible host. I'll just skip that portion. Brock Bowers, in my opinion, is just the best tight end. I think that Fernando Mendoza is a great quarterback to have if you're a tight end in terms of fantasy football, because Fernando Mendoza is a very conservative passer in terms of he's not going to try to go all out, and he's going to throw those intermediate passes that Brock Bowers specializes in. And Brock Bowers is that kind of playmaker where Fernando Mendoza can hit him in the intermediate game, and Brock Bowers can really make those plays like he always does. And I think that Fernando Mendoza and Brock Bowers are going to have that connection right away. I think that Brock Bowers is just that magnetic of a tight end and that magnetic of a target in terms of just getting targets. And on top of that, the Raiders just really don't have anyone else to throw the ball to in terms of their wide receivers. Like, they added Jalen Naylor, they have Trey Tucker, but like they really don't have anyone else that's really gonna take those targets away from Brock Bowers. And I think that Fernando Mendoza is just gonna keep looking at Brock Bowers, and if Brock Bowers can stay healthy, he's just gonna keep producing, and he's just gonna keep getting those targets, keep getting those receptions, and I think he's gonna be number one. He's going to be the number one tight end for years to come. He's just that talented of a tight end. And that will conclude this episode of Side to Sideline Report. I thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe, and stay tuned for when the next episode comes out on all of my socials at Side to Sideline Report on all social medias. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching this video. God bless, and have a great rest of your night, great rest of your week, and I will see you next time. Peace out.